What is sales? What is it really? I realize in the context of the professional, the person who has conversation, sales is the creation of certainty. It does not matter if we are certain if this is right for the prospect, as long as they are certain by the end of it. Why is this such a profound shift? Because it frees the salesperson up from this idea that they have to be high energy and forceful. It removes the shackles of pushing your product or service, and by extension, removes the single most common judgment for any sales rep, that you have to be pushy to be in sales. To be in sales, you must be pushy. You push products. This eliminates that entirely, or at least gives you the option to eliminate it. You can transfer certainty if you would like to, but it is not required. It is not what actually moves the deal across the line. This was a profound realization for me, and I hope it is for the listener of this podcast as well. Welcome, everyone, to the Close More Sales podcast. On today's episode, we are going to cover a topic I can guarantee you will not find anywhere else. And the reason I can say that with such conviction is because we will be covering the Vivid Selling Framework, which is the framework that I developed in the process of selling high-ticket items over the phone to get my prospects emotional and excited about moving forward, all while feeling like they made this decision entirely on their own. Vivid is an acronym, and I train dozens of salespeople on this very particular concept. And that concept is asking the right questions in the right order is the key to making more money than a doctor as a sales professional. The Vivid Selling Framework is the order of those questions. And this is something I usually reserve for paying clients because it is so incredible to actually free yourself from the cage of memorizing a script and into the lush green fields of following a framework, and a framework that has been proven to work. So I will break this down for you on this episode now so that you can apply this to your sales conversations immediately and start getting better results today. So what's the purpose of this show anyway? Why am I just giving this framework away for free if I usually charge for it? The purpose of this show is to empower sales professionals and entrepreneurs to push themselves to grow, achieve unimaginable success without burning out, and ultimately transform their lives. I'm Ian Ross, and I am obsessed with all things sales, and I work with teams across the world to make more money by asking better questions. The most proven path to achieving financial freedom is maximizing your earning potential. And a sales role is the lowest barrier with the highest possible ceiling for entry onto that path. Anyone can become a killer salesperson with the right techniques, mindset, and consistency. And everything we cover on this podcast is geared toward one thing: helping you close more sales so that you can live the life you want. If you would like to get a sheet breaking down all the things we say on a follow-up call, text follow up, 2 words, to 33777, and we'll send you a template of what to say on the phone completely for free. So you never have to say, I'm just following up or I'm just checking in ever again. You can actually know what to say. So what is the Vivid Selling Framework and what does the acronym stand for? The acronym is Vision, Identify, Validate, Impact, Decision. And to elaborate a little more, that is the vision for where they want to go, identify the gap between where they are now and their goals, validate but not necessarily agree with their hesitations and concerns at all times, the impact of not making any changes, and finally, what would they like to decide to do? But first, let me give you some context to both how and why I developed this framework to illustrate these points in as crystal clear a way as I can, because you need to understand what the goal of a framework is to be able to utilize it effectively. This is not pure memorization. In fact, the whole point of the Vivid Selling idea is to throw off the idea that rote memorization is the way to get good at sales. That's how most companies train you. In my first commission-only sales role, I was selling life insurance. And it was sometime after getting my insurance license and in the training for that company when I heard this old adage about what sales is. I heard this line: sales is the transference of energy. And I thought that was interesting and made some sort of sense, right? We needed to have energy to sell our prospects. It was a tough gig, and so I needed to do it. Then I heard someone elaborate on that a bit. And I wasn't sure if that person was misspeaking or not because it was so similar to that first line. But I heard them say this. They said, sales is the transference of emotion. And I liked that even more. It made a lot of sense to me in selling life insurance because I was selling such an emotional, intangible product. Then I heard Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street himself, elaborate on that. He said this. He said, sales is the transference of emotion, and that emotion is certainty. And I loved that. And I thought it made so much more sense. And I clung to that idea for quite some time. And I made a lot of money holding to that idea. But then as I got better at sales and I got even more profound results in a different role, I realized that's not quite right. That's not exactly true. What is sales? What is it really? I realized in the context of the professional, the person who has conversations, sales is the creation of certainty. It does not matter if we are certain if this is right for the prospect, as long as they are certain by the end of it. Why is this such a profound shift? Because it frees the salesperson up from this idea that they have to be high energy and forceful. It removes the shackles of pushing your product or service, and by extension, removes the single most common judgment for any sales rep, that you have to be pushy to be in sales. To be in sales, you must be pushy. You push products. This eliminates that entirely, or at least gives you the option to eliminate it. You can transfer certainty if you would like to, but it is not required. It is not what actually moves the deal across the line. This was a profound realization for me, and I hope it is for the listener of this podcast as well, because you do not have to be certain or convey certainty that what you are selling is right for the person that you are selling it to. In fact, I would argue that your level of conviction in favor of selling it to that person is actually hurting you. To be clear, it's incredibly important to have conviction in the results of your product or service and what it can provide. But that does not mean you are certain it is right for your prospect and that they should definitely sign up at the end of your pitch. The significance of the benefits here of adopting this mindset cannot be overstated. It's a key point. If you give your prospect a chance to feel like they're making their own decision, you are also able to pull away and offer alternatives in a mode that helps your prospect feel the urgency themselves and take an action. And you free yourself from the risk of burnout because you are not bending over backwards to put on this high energy performance multiple times a day. And more importantly than all of that, I have seen this directly. I've seen this multiple times in the results of not just my own bank account, but in the hundreds of salespeople I have taught this to. I've seen that they were able to unlock a whole new level of income, a new tax bracket, by simply embracing this one concept and all the ripple effects of it, forgetting the tactical benefits of the vivid selling framework itself, just embodying this idea. I don't want to spend too much time talking in this rah-rah mode about the framework before diving into specifics, but I need to touch on something here. I've heard this brought up multiple times when I cover the framework. You will notice two noticeable aspects most sales training covers that the framework is lacking, and that is by design. Those two are the rapport building stage, often included at the start of a sales call, and the actual presentation of the product and or service and the price of it and how to present that. So first, let's talk about the lack of rapport building at the start. On my own sales calls, where I utilize the vivid selling framework over and over again, I do not spend time talking about the weather, about sports teams, about your hometown or your family. The reason I do not do that is because that would be wasting precious time. I want to build the right type of rapport, which is trust, not just basic likability. I might spend 60 seconds or so on some idle chatter before diving into my questions, but my goal is to get into the first letter of the acronym, which is vision, as soon as possible. I will build trust incrementally over the course of our conversation by asking great questions and repeating back what I heard in recapping statements, that I show I understand my prospect's entire world. but I won't waste time on the quote unquote rapport building that extroverted salespeople have been told helps them close the sale. And then they repeat that lie over and over again like a mantra. The other aspects of not going into the specifics of your product are also important here, but I would just want to stop for a moment on this concept. Break this down. The right type of rapport is trust, not likability. Okay? Just understand this. And so rather than trying to be liked, and by extension, being afraid to push in a way into your prospects' pain and concerns, their desires, their hesitations, their personal motivations, not push the product, but push into that uncomfortable space. By not being afraid to do that, because I don't care if you like me or not. It's fine if you like me. That never hurts me, but I'm never in pursuit of it for its own sake. I am in pursuit of you trusting me as an authority. I am in pursuit of you making sure that my recommendation to you feels like it came from a professional, not from a friend. If I can do that right, you will probably move forward with my recommendation because you trust it rather than simply liking me. You know this in your own life. When you have to fix your car, is your first inclination to go to your little cousin who you might like, who's learning about cars because you like him so much? Or do you want to go to the professional who you trust who will get it done? This is how to think about this. And I've got people in my own life who I like very much, but I don't want them seeing the numbers on my credit card. Don't look at my Amex, please, even though I want to hang out with you at a barbecue. It is not likability that matters. It is the ability to inspire trust in your recommendation. That comes incrementally over time through how I ask questions and recap back what is important to you. That is what I am in pursuit of, not just, oh, you like the Packers? I like the Packers too. That means nothing in the context of sales. So I am wasting my time the more time I spend on it. And if you spend a ton of time on it as a sales professional, you are wasting precious time and by extension, wasting money as well. Okay, just wanted to touch on that point. Now, to get into the specifics of presenting your product or service and the price of it and why I don't spend too much time here, that is left out on purpose. Not only because depending on what you sell, there will be different things you actually do need to cover that I can't know for certain here. And I have trained people in multiple industries on this concept, on this framework, and they have found success. So I don't want to go into specifics that might hurt you or hinder you from utilizing this. And also, most companies spend way too long talking about the features and benefits of what you sell. They train you to do that. This is a huge mistake because it's focusing on the wrong aspects of getting someone to decide to take action. It's not that benefits don't matter, but the amount of time you spend on them determines their weight in influencing decisions. And decisions are ultimately not influenced by the benefits alone, or everyone you walk past would be in the best shape of their life, making more money than ever. Human beings are emotional creatures with emotional drivers, and we make decisions emotionally. Neuroscience has shown that when you remove the part of the brain that feels emotion, you literally paralyze the decision-making process. They have done this in the past, and those patients then couldn't decide what clothes to put on in the morning or what to make for breakfast. The less time you spend sounding like a landing page or an instruction manual listing off the features and benefits, the more time you spend on getting your prospect to verbalize what's important to them, the better. That's the orientation here of the Vivid Selling Framework. I want to get my prospect talking about what is important to them. That is my whole goal, not to spend time talking myself about my product or service. And then there are certain specifics that I might have to cover that can be nuanced and varied depending on what it is you sell. But I have had someone send me an invoice for $2,000. That was the first payment into a program before they even knew what the program was after I ran the Vivid Selling Framework. That sounds crazy and made up. It's actually true. It actually happened. I went through this process and he got so emotional and felt such certainty. And I dealt with objections too. There were objections that were thrown at me, but I know how to deal with them and I'm not disturbed by them. It's just, I expect them and run through this process. So it doesn't feel like, oh no, I got an objection. That's a natural hesitation or concern that any prospect might throw out there, and I know how to deal with it. And I just expected that. But that point here is I didn't spend forever talking about the product, talking about the timing of the service or what's included or when it's involved. He had already paid $2,000 before I even told him when calls were. That happens when you do this right. It might seem like an extreme example to you, but this process is all about getting your prospects to feel like they are making their own decisions through an emotional drive. And the emotional trajectory I want to take someone on in a sales conversation is gain to pain to pen. I've talked about this before on the podcast, but it's worth repeating here. Gain to pain to pen. Okay? That's the right way to think about someone verbalizing what is important to them across the broadest possible spectrum. Pain inspires more action than gain, so that's why pain ends rather than pain starts. So many people might start in the pain. Tell me about your problems. Tell me what you've done. And then and now your life will be great. That's an aspect of transferring certainty. I want to give you this dopamine hit. And so now you take action right at the top of the dopamine hit. That's not how I want to do things. I would rather give you dopamine hit and then take it away and then give the dopamine hit back when you move forward with me. That's the right way to do this in a broad context. So again, the vivid selling framework: vision, identify, validate, impact, decision. Okay. So the first acronym, or the first letter in the acronym, the V, is vision. Let's dive into the first step here of the vivid framework: vision. This process here, and what I'm going to repeat, these all come out very quickly. And usually, again, as I train this, there's an interactive component. So we're losing some of the effectiveness of this training, of course, but I want to give you a broad overview. So at least you feel equipped to start trying to take action on this. This is about not just understanding where your prospect wants to go. It's also making sure they can envision themselves at that state. So I might ask questions like this. This is the order of questions asked. So what are some of the goals you're hoping to accomplish in the next few months or years, I might say, right? And then I want to probe deeper based on their answers. Like, how much money would you like to be making? Or how much money would you like to be saving? It depends what I'm selling, right? But this is the trajectory, okay? Then I might ask, oh, that sounds great. Well, what would your personal life look like if we got you where you want to go? And then start exploring longer term aspirations. Man, if that's going as well as you hope in the next couple of years, what does a decade start to look like for you? I am giving you the dopamine hit through your own description of your future. That's the goal here. And there's also a key component. Again, it depends what you're selling. Since I sell sales training, there's an aspect of gain in getting better at sales to make more money and your life is better, right? That's a natural emotional trajectory. Depending on what you're selling, that might not be the case. If you want to figure out how to apply the specifics of this to exactly what you do, you can reach out to us so we can figure out what that will look like. But this is the concept. This was initially done for high ticket closing, where the goal was doing something with your business. That was the initial point of it. And most salespeople don't have the creativity to realize the adjustments for what you sell and what you do and what you present is so minor. It's almost embarrassing that you can't make that connection yourself, but that's how most salespeople are. They lack that little spark of creativity to figure out how they can apply what they hear with some minor adjustments. So if you don't sell something where there's some big aspect of gain, instead of shutting this off and going, oh, well, I don't ask questions like that, how could I? The adjustments are so minor in terms of the questions to still give the same emotional point. But if you want help with that, you reach out. So that's the goal here. I'm getting you to verbalize how good your life would be, how much money you'll be making, what that money could also mean over longer term. Would you reinvest that money into aspects of your business? Would you buy assets? What would your life start to look like? What would your family life start to look like? If everything's going great like that after 5 years, is it simply double that in 10, or do you feel like it compounds, it gets even better? I am letting you, through questions, verbalize your gain and tell me what is important to you. That's the vision part of my questions. Then I move on to identify, and identifying the gap between where you are right now and where you want to go. This step focuses on pinpointing the obstacles that stand in the way of your prospect's goals. And then I want to make sure I hear about what they've already tried so I can position what I offer as different. So a really profound question to start with, going into this process is, what are the types of things that have been standing in the way of hitting those goals? Then I'll start to going into their efforts and the barriers they face along the way. Okay, how have you been trying to make those changes? Or maybe what's been holding you back from making the real attempt? And then I'll start to discuss some broader impacts. Man, like it sounds like you've been trying to do X, Y, and Z, and you can't get it done. How are these challenges affecting, other aspects of your life? Are there any other consequences of not fixing this? This is really key here. How are these challenges affecting other aspects of your life? Are there any other consequences of not fixing this? There's a lot included there, right? And sort of some deep psychological concepts. First of all, by even asking, are there any other consequences of not fixing this? If we're building the right type of rapport where you trust me and what I am talking about, you are likely to engage with the question. What do I mean by that? Is that you are going to try and find psychologically other consequences of not fixing this. And a lot of this comes through in tone, right? That's why written out, this is never as effective as hearing it and seeing it, and specifically going through it together with our training. But if I do this right, the person who I ask it kind of plays ball with the question. They play ball. What happens when they play ball is that they answer the question. And when they answer the question, they've now verbalized a new reality that I can draw on. Okay? What matters in a sales conversation is not, in theory, what I say. That's why this is a list of questions to ask in the right order. It matters what the prospect says. If we can get the prospect to verbalize what is important to them and verbalize what they've tried and verbalize all their challenges and the other consequences of not fixing this challenge, if they can verbalize it, that is reality. And that's what I want to draw on. So I'm doing my very best to get my prospect to verbalize that there could be other consequences. If they go no, okay, well then tell me about that main consequence again. Like there's no ripple effects of that. And through my curiosity and confusion, they might be like, well, I guess there could be. Like what? Tell me more about that. And now suddenly I've got more things. What's key here is in identifying the gap, right? Because I'm not even in the impact stage. I'm just stoking this point of transitioning into impact, okay? I want to identify what they haven't done, what they have not yet tried, or what they have tried and how that is different from what I offer. Because if it just feels like I'm offering the same thing that didn't get them results before, why would they take action on it? In doing that, I also want to sort of implant this very subtle idea that there are aspects of not fixing this that is holding them back in other areas of the life that isn't even at the forefront of their mind. If I can do that effectively through what you verbalize to me, in the case of you being the prospect, maybe I should rephrase it. If you can do that as the salesperson to your prospect, what happens is that they suddenly realize this issue is even bigger than they were aware of. If it's bigger than they were aware of, the consequences are kind of immeasurable, which means the consequences will feel heavier on the scale than the cost of taking action and fixing this problem. The simple way to think about selling something is to make the cost of it less than the benefit or less than the risk of the negative if they don't pay it, right? That's the simplest way to do that. Like this needs to feel like enough of a benefit that it outweighs the cost I'm putting into it. That fits in the idea of investing into a thing. That's why a lot of salespeople talk using that language. I do as well, because I want to make sure it feels like this is not a pure cost, like I'm paying for a luxury good. I want to that doesn't have any investment value, right? I want to make it feel like I'm investing into a thing where the benefits far outweigh the costs. That is the goal of getting people to spend money on something, is that the benefits feel like they far outweigh the cost and they outweigh the risk of spending the money without getting the cost because the benefits would be so huge. But the way to do that is not to spend a lot of time talking about the benefits. Interestingly enough, it's to get the prospect to talk about how great their life could be and the consequences of not getting themselves to that based on what they've tried and what they haven't done. That's the real key to getting it, and what most salespeople are lacking, understanding what gets someone to verbalize the things that get them to take action. So that's the impact stage. We'll transition into impact, but first, the middle V, validate. validate is not a step. That's why it kind of goes from identifying to impact. Because validate is not a step that I move someone through, as it is like with the other letters in the acronym. As much as it is something that must permeate throughout the entire conversation. This is how we address and demonstrate understanding of our prospects' hesitations and concerns without necessarily agreeing with them. So common validating statements I use all the time. I've heard similar concerns like that before. That makes sense. Gotcha. It sounds like you've thought about this a lot. Okay. I want to say things like that. This step is crucial for building the right type of rapport and showing empathy towards my prospect situations. Why do I say validate but not necessarily agree with the prospect's hesitations and concerns at all times? Let's talk about why I don't mean agree with them. Whenever I hear an objection or an obstacle, and again, to differentiate, an obstacle is something that, if left unattended, will turn into an objection when asking for the sale. That's all it is. An obstacle is something earlier on. Objection is when asking for the sale. So when I hear either, how I view that is my prospect raising a shield. Now, most sales training teaches to hit that shield head on with your rebuttal of that objection. But what happens if you don't knock a shield out of someone's hand? They dig in harder. So instead, I view this, and I do view this quite literally in my head this way, is to walk around the shield and carry on with my questions. Grant Cardone has said, I don't know which book or call I heard, he said, always agree with your prospects, never argue with them. Well, he's right in that the sensation of always agreeing with them is created in a certain way of walking around the shield, right? Agreement, though, implies a value judgment that could come back to bite you. So to differentiate, if I validate, I am saying, I understand where you're coming from and why you are saying that. And to agree all the time is to say, yes, I agree with you no matter what you tell me. So the example I always give is, let's say I'm selling Mercedes, because this fits the sort of the Grant Cardone model, and the prospect on the lot says to me, I hate Mercedes. They're not good. I don't want to say, I agree with you. Mercedes are the worst. They're terrible. Because then I've just shot myself in the foot. How can I make progress there? How can I say, now buy this one anyway? Instead, what I say is, I've heard that before. In the past, that's usually because the people who told me that either didn't like someone they knew who drove a Mercedes, or maybe they had one negative experience with a particular older model. I'm curious whether that comes up for you now. That's what I ask. It gives the same sensation as I agree with you without the value judgment that could hurt me in still trying to sell the same thing. Now, that's a more obvious example because they're saying, I don't like the product. But sometimes the prospect might be saying something like, oh, I want to consider a competitor, or this other feature is more important to me that you don't have. If I say that I agree with you, that is the most important thing. Now I can't position what I sell as the solution to your problem. And it actually might be the solution. You might be under a misconception. My job is to give you the sensation as if I agreed with you by validating your hesitations and concerns, but I'm not necessarily agreeing with it so that I have room to seek clarity about what is important to you around why you say that. And then I can position something in regards to what I sell that fits that need without being the initial point. So let's say in the Mercedes example, I'm thinking this up off the top of my head. If they say, yeah, I don't like Mercedes because in the two I've been in, the seats were too small. And I don't like feeling like I'm in a small seat. That's a very specific reason. Not every Mercedes-Benz has the same size seat, right? Like it varies depending on the model, what you're doing. Now I can go, okay, so it sounds like we want to make sure we get you a model that you're feeling comfort in. Comfort matters more. Now, you can tell I thought that off the top of my head because not too many people say that about Mercedes, but that's the point I'm making. If they said that, now I know the main cause of their hesitation, and I can take them to certain cars that won't give them that sensation. And that will never become an actual objection when they verbalize that. I validated their concerns and found the main cause of it and positioned something else in regards to what I sell to fit that need rather than their initial hesitation. That's the key here. That's why it's the middle V, because it permeates throughout all aspects of the conversation. Validate, but not necessarily agree with the prospect's hesitations and concerns at all times. Then we transition into the fourth step here. The I for impact. This is so key. The impact step is really where the money is made as a salesperson. And what you want to do here is help your prospect quantify the problem and understand what's at stake if changes aren't made. Again, what's key here? I'm trying to quantify the problem that they have through their own language and tie that cost to an action. So key questions to ask, how much is this costing you right now? And then I'll tie in future implications. Man, if you don't make any changes, what are the types of things you could be missing out on if you're not making the type of money you just said you could be making? And then we can exacerbate the problem by building off it with the numbers the prospect has already verbalized to us. So let's say, okay, so if you think if you make changes, everything goes perfectly, you'd make an extra $100,000 in the next 6 months. If this ends up costing you $100,000 over the next 6 months, what will 5, 10, even 20 years look like? I let them answer that. I don't want to rush through this stage because I am creating pain here by taking away the gain they verbalized. What would happen if you can't make any changes? I want to tie the feeling of removing the gain they just verbalized to me at the start in the vision part. I want to tie that to an action in a way that drives decision, which is the final step here, the D. D, we arrive at decision here. This is about getting the prospect to feel like they made the decision to move forward. I don't ask all of the questions I'm going to repeat here because I usually only need one closing question if I've done the rest of my job effectively. But examples of closing questions I have personally used with this framework are, man, if we can get this problem fixed, how should we prioritize it? If we can take care of X, we can take and then do Y and eventually Z, how should we prioritize this? What do you feel like we should do now? If you need to make this change, X change by Y date, when should we look to actually take action on it? Or if we can take care of X, we can take care of Y, and we can definitely get Z sorted out for you. Do you feel like this would be helpful? And then after they've verbalized a level of agreement to that, I might go, well, I've kind of an uncomfortable question here. Do you want our help? This is the emotional trajectory I take someone on. And I slow down intentionally as I get to this stage. Okay? This is so powerful if you adopt this stuff. These questions, I'm just touching surface level about this because the reality is it goes way, way deeper. But I wanted to give you a taste here of the power of moving someone through this process and asking questions in a way that gets them thinking about the implications of not taking action and how much they're missing out on by keeping things the same. My enemy is not a competitor. My enemy is indecision. It is inaction. That is the enemy of the salesperson, is I need to think about it because I'm afraid to take action right now. I need to build urgency the right way through what you tell me is important if you are my prospect. So as we close out today's dive into the Vivid Selling Framework, and this was kind of a surface level dive into it here, I want to really hammer this home. For the acronym VIVID, again, there's a reason this is my Instagram account, Vivid Selling, because I love this framework. I believe so passionately about it. Vision, identify, validate, impact, decision. The vision for where they want to go. Identify the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Validate, but not necessarily agree with, their hesitations and concerns at all times. The impact of not taking action. And finally, what would they like to decide to do? This is your roadmap to asking questions to truly understand where your clients are coming from and where they want to go. But it is only the first half of the equation. When I run this training for my clients, I always role play with someone and have them answer those questions honestly, because there needs to be an aspect of interactivity to truly demonstrate how effective this is. This is like showing me, juggling a soccer ball around and being like, look, I'm as good as Ronaldo, right? You need active listening and repeating back what is said before going on to the next question. In isolation, question after question comes off like an interrogation, not a conversation. There is a way to do this so it feels like the conversation you should be having with motivated prospects. For everyone tuning into the Close More Sales podcast, everyone listening now, I challenge you to put the Vivid framework into action during your next client call, during your next sales call, your next interaction, your next follow-up, the next time you need to make money with a prospect, and to notice the shifts in your conversations, how they unfold, how much more engaged your clients become. I've seen this in multiple industries. And if you're pumped to get deeper into this, to really master the implications of these types of questions, the techniques we cover on this show, the tonality in saying it, and how to recap the responses back in between each question so they feel heard and understood, text CLOSE, CLOSE, to 33777. I'll happily give you the tools to make Beverly Hills surgeon money through running this process. Sales is a noble profession. You can actually solve your prospects' challenges if you get them emotional about taking action right now and build that urgency through what's important to them. Let's make your conversations actually matter by asking the right questions in the right order, the right way. I'm Ian Ross. This has been the Close More Sales Podcast.